Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the talk show #1 within the Vietnam Arbitration Week 2023. So to mark the 30th anniversary of VIAC, VIAC in collaboration with the Vietnam Business Lawyers Club co-hosts the Vietnam ADR Week of 2023 so that it becomes a national level forum for sharing knowledge and practical experience about risk prevention, management, and dispute resolution through out-of-court methods, or so-called alternative dispute resolution methods. Following the success of the Vietnam ADR Week of 2020, the Vietnam ADR Week continues to show the Vietnam International Arbitration Center's commitment to serving the legal and the business communities. So the week opens discussions and it allows reflection on appropriate solutions and measures to adapt to the growth, the economic growth that is happening in Asia, which is strongly bouncing back from the COVID pandemic. Those are topics that we will touch upon during our discussion tonight. And I leave the floor to Trang to tell us more about tonight's discussion.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Hoang. Today's talk is all about the young generation, about young Vietnamese legal practitioners and their expectations and prospects in Vietnam and regional ADRs markets. As we are here to represent the young generation of Vietnamese legal practitioners, we decided that we would have a comfortable and cozy chat among all the hosts, the guests, and the audience. So let's introduce ourselves first. We have two hosts, which is Ms. Nguyen Thang from Peter Kim, and I am Trang from Dzungsrt and Associates. So Ms. Hoang, could you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Yes, so I'm an international arbitration lawyer doing only international arbitration, both commercial and investment treaty-based arbitration. And I'm based in Geneva, Switzerland, being French trained and also very knowledgeable now in Swiss law, having practiced 10 years in Switzerland.
Thanks, Ms. Hoang. And I am Nguyen Trang, the arbitration partner of Dzungsrt and Associates. I have 12 experience in resolving a lot of disputes involving commercial and investment arbitration in Vietnam. And I hope that since we are a young practitioner and I'm also the moderator of Young Vietnam ADR group, I hope that we will have a fruitful discussion today.
Thank you, Trang. And now that you know your host, let's turn to our guests of today. And it's a real pleasure to welcome them because I've known them for a long time. So they are representing very well the young generation, the young Vietnamese arbitration practitioners generation in the field of ADRs. And before we're gonna speak with them, I will let them introduce themselves. Maybe first Donnie and then Man, if you can introduce yourselves.
Thank you for this opportunity. It's a bit regrettable that we don't get to do this in person, but it's still a pleasure for me to be on the same panel session with my three friends, if I may, because I have known them for a while now, and who are very much more experienced and talented lawyers, more than myself. So it's I look up to them and have a lot of admiration for these guys. My name is Donnie Tran. That's the name that I used to practice in Singapore. Because so that's how Singaporean know me as Donnie, but Vietnamese lawyers know me as Hoang. I am an international arbitration associate at Hoang Partnership Singapore, and our firm is known as one of the big 4 local law firms in Singapore. And our international arbitration team, which I believe is one of the strongest arbitration teams in Singapore or in the region. It's a combination of foreign lawyers from different jurisdictions We have Indian lawyers, Chinese lawyers, and Vietnamese lawyer. We have one Vietnamese lawyer like myself, and we combine with the local lawyers with high expertise in Singapore law. So majority of the international arbitration matters that we're handling are VIAC arbitrations with foreign elements, like, for example, like matters between Singapore parties and Vietnamese parties, or matter between non-Singaporean parties, but the seat of arbitration is Singapore, and all other types of arbitrations under various other arbitration rules like RCC rules or UNCITRAL rules relating to Singapore. So throughout my career, which is quite short compared to the other panelists, I've got opportunities to work on and representing clients in various arbitration matters, both the commercial and investor state arbitrations. I've represented both claimants and respondents in VIAC or ICC arbitrations. Majority of these arbitrations have Vietnamese elements, like the Vietnamese parties or the governing law is Vietnamese law. I've also done investment arbitrations. I've worked on cases under the ICSID convention, ad hoc arbitration like UNCITRAL rules, representing both claimant investors or respondent states. I have done tribunal secrecy work as well. I'm not sure if there's a common thing in VIAC, but it's quite common in ICC and arbitrations. And they all have the rules regarding the appointment of tribunal secretary.
Thanks, Donnie, for your very detailed introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Ming, and I am currently the senior associate at VLab. I've been working here for about 10 years, and a major part of my career working experience is in dispute resolution department. And before that, I was an intern and a collaborator at the VIAC, where I have obtained quite hand-on experience on dispute resolution and arbitration. It's my pleasure to be here today, and I hope that my experience may be helpful to you in your future career path. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Man and Donnie and Jung. So now we're gonna speak more about like generally what it is to practice ADR in diverse jurisdiction. So Trang, I don't know if you have some questions about this for guests today. You're mute.
Hi, thank you very much. So, of course, I have some questions for you. I can see that despite working in different countries and in different roles, Ming and Donnie share a mutual interest in ADR fields. So, what drew you towards to ADRs?
Okay, so let me share my experience and opinion first. So when I was younger, I was impressed by the image of litigation lawyers on the movies. They are smart, cool, and very confident. So I always wanted to become a litigation lawyer in the future. And later, when I grew up and studied at the law school, I began to know that besides core litigation, there are also ADRs methods, including arbitration. And to me, arbitration was very advanced because the parties are treated equally and their agreements are respected by the tribunal, by the arbitrators, and also the institutions. Meanwhile, Vietnamese court has certain downside, which makes me feel like sometimes proceeding is out of my control. So that's why I decided to focus more on ADR in my career.
Yeah. I actually come from a very similar approach or position as Ming at the beginning of when I started the law school. For me personally, I've always wanted to be a dispute lawyer because that's when I was young, it's like in my head that's kind of the definition of a true lawyer. no, without any offense to lawyers who do advisory work. But like in Vietnamese, some people refer to lawyer as like thầy cãi is in Vietnamese. So if you translate that into English, it's like master of arguing, right? And who argues? It's dispute lawyer or barristers. That being said, I always prefer arbitration over court litigation. If you ask me for a specific reason, I'm not sure how to say, but it's normal because people tend to prefer one thing over another. But I guess what I like about arbitration or ADRs, which is the thing that I think the court litigation doesn't have, is the procedural flexibility, I think, because the parties can decide themselves on the procedures on their arbitration, the party submissions in the form of memorials or pleadings, or when to produce the documents, virtual hearing or in-person hearing. Actually, just to share with you, in a recent case, not that recent, but like I have an arbitration where it's been delayed for over a year for party to negotiate. And every time, so we have to update the tribunal every month. And so just after 1 month, like we submit like a joint email or joint application to say that, hey, hi, dear tribunal, the parties are still negotiating. Can you grant us an extension of time for 1 month, and we will update the tribunal the next month. And the tribunal come back and say, just one line and say the EOT is granted. And I was like, it's okay, it's that easy. It's easy and simple. I think the scenario before the court would be much more complicated. Yeah.
Trang, did you have any follow-up question on this?
Yeah, sure. So what would be the 3 words to best describe your current job? Do you get the job satisfaction in your current position or not?
That's a very, very interesting question. So for me, the 3 words are challenging, but interesting and well paid. And I think that's more than enough for to be satisfied. Yeah.
Yeah. Do I have to elaborate my 3 words, or do I just say the 3 words? I mean, the first word is for me is hardworking. Definitely. I don't need to re-emphasize. I don't need to repeat to the experienced lawyer how hardworking we have to be if we want to be a good lawyer. But if this message is sent to the young law students, then I definitely have to say that if you want to be a good lawyer, you have to prepare to face the truth that you'll be extremely busy and work very hard in this profession. If you want to be a good lawyer, you have to accept the fact that you're staying up until 1 a.m., 2 a.m., or working 14 hours a day is not, it's a common practice. And if you're staying up all night, or for example, during the hearing week, it's not unusual. And for certain periods of time, you don't have time for yourself or your family. And you gotta be, the second word is careful. Because especially, I mean, for corporate lawyer or advisory lawyer, you need to be careful. But I think especially for dispute lawyer, you need to be extremely careful. Because in a dispute, you have an opponent who's reading your writing word by word to kind of take advantage of your mistakes. And if you get one wrong word, then there's no way to take it back. That's why when we submit the submission, just to share, when you submit a submission in an arbitration at one partnership, probably just my team, but our partners generally make the whole team to sit in one room. Sometimes it's like 2 a.m. in the morning, to stand before the computer for 5 minutes and consider whether there are any possible mistakes that we may make before we hit the send button together. And I think you can start practicing to be more careful by reading your email, even a short email to your senior colleagues or your partners, like twice or 3 times before you send. Repeat the same exercise when you send more important emails or letters to clients, to opposing counsel, to the tribunal. I mean, mistakes are inevitable, but if you find out that you make a mistake, then you have to be embarrassed about it and try to avoid it next time. So the first two words are like quite an obligation when you have to work hard and you have to be careful. So my final word is actually quite positive and the same as Anh Minh just mentioned, it's interesting. I think if this job was not interesting for me, then I would quit the job a long time ago and rather do something else. So sometimes you feel that it's busy or exhausting, but deep down inside if you love the job enough, then you kind of enjoy that feeling of being busy. Because at the end of the day, you know for a fact that you're busy means that you are growing up and you'll be a better lawyer. Thanks for being busy. Yeah.
Thanks, Thang. But from what you just said, it appears to me that the words you are describing is stressful, not hard working or be careful or whatever, but it's stressful really. Right, so to give us a very brief overview of the ADRs in Vietnam and in the reasons for our further exchange on this topic, we have prepared some statistics, and let's have a look.
Thank you. So we have seen some statistics about the vibrant market that is Asia in general, and we're speaking more particularly about the ADR market in Vietnam tonight. And we have the chance to have you both coming. You are both practicing in different jurisdictions, Man and Bunny. So it would be great to have your varied perspective on how to make it in arbitration. I mean, because we already have questions in the chat, and there are a lot of students and young practitioners who are interested in developing basically like the same career as you, doing mostly arbitration, but also some litigation. There are some who do not find that there is enough practice in their firm sometimes in Vietnam regarding arbitration and on litigation. So what are the opportunities, the career opportunities that you see in Vietnam and Singapore respectively? So maybe let's start with Vietnam and then we'll contrast with Singapore.
Yeah, thank you. So I must say that there are a lot of opportunities in Vietnam for ADR jobs right now. Because you know that the development of ADRs leads to the fact that there are more and more firms doing dispute resolution, and arbitration institution, they will try to expand worldwide. For example, I heard that PCA and KCAB have just opened their office in Vietnam recently. And besides, as ADR is quite new in Vietnam, many companies will also need their legal staff who can deal with ADR. So I think that the opportunities here are endless, and you just need to prepare your knowledge, prepare your skill and find the appropriate choice or opportunity for you. You may work in the law firm, or you may apply to an arbitration institution or something like that. And by working, you can accumulate more and more knowledge and experience. That's good for your future. Yep.
Yeah. In the vision of Vietnam, I totally agree with Nguyen, because Ming and I are kind of in a similar age, similar generation. Nguyen is a bit like 1 or 2 years older than me. So I think we both kind of suffer or struggle to find a job back then. If you want to like focus our entire time in arbitration in Vietnam, there's much less opportunities back then. And I also have been through that period. But now I think there's definitely more opportunities. By practicing arbitration, I don't mean small value domestic arbitration. I mean like really high value international arbitration. That's what it's worth practicing, to be honest. In terms of Singapore, to be honest, not many Vietnamese lawyers practicing arbitration overseas. And in Singapore, to the best of my knowledge, I am the only Vietnamese who is practicing arbitration in a local Singapore law firm. Of course, we have YKVN, who has an office there, and we have a VIAC Counsel who I know very well. But yeah, I'm the only one who works in a local Singapore law firm and practice arbitration. Even I don't know if I'm missing someone. I apologize if I do, but even if there is anyone other than me, then it's still very few. Then that is what makes me kind of unique in this market. And being unique, I think being unique in the market is always a great advantage. Even if you practice arbitration in Europe or London, you'd be one of very few Vietnamese people who work there, as opposed to Chinese lawyers or Indian lawyers. I mean, they are everywhere, and it's not hard to find. So it's not easy for a Chinese lawyer or Indian lawyer to stand out in those markets. But for Vietnamese, wherever you go, you are like amongst the rare species. And people love rare species. People tend to protect rare species. Sorry, I'm kidding.
Just one question, Donnie, a follow-up question on this, because you say that there are not that many Vietnamese lawyers like you practicing in Singapore, but so it makes you unique. But does it mean, I mean, given, you told us about your practice also practicing with Vietnamese law applicable, Vietnamese seat in Singapore. So does it mean that the people who are listening today, like the people who want to build a career in arbitration, do you think if you're Vietnamese student, a Vietnamese young practitioner, it's something realistic to go to Singapore? Do you think there is room for more Vietnamese lawyers there because there are a lot of Vietnamese cases that are arbitrated there?
There's definitely a lot of room. I think I feel like the arbitration market in Vietnam has been significantly expanded for sure. I've seen countless of young students are now much better than I was when I was at their age, in terms of both knowledge, English language, which is very important in arbitration, legal analysis and knowledge in arbitration. I attended the workshop yesterday, and I saw a lot of young associates and younger than me associates and interns. They are very good. I'm very impressed by that. And with the expansion of the markets, it opens up the opportunities for these guys. You will have more opportunities to practice, not only in Vietnam, other countries like Singapore or other countries in the ASEAN region, for example. They see Vietnam as an incredibly potential market. So for sure, if you want to step out of the comfort zone and practice overseas like what I'm doing now, then definitely more opportunities for you guys here, because they will need you. But you need to take initiative and to find a way to get access to the Singapore market or other markets if you really want to work there. I seriously can't tell you how you can do it. You're gonna have to find it on your own way. It's not gonna be easy, but even if you succeed in getting a job here in Singapore, it's not a dream. You would need to suffer a lot. Like unlike studying away from home, like you do a master's degree where you get to make friends with international students like you. Working away from home is working in a different country is completely different. It's not as nice. It takes a lot of sacrifice. takes so much time to adapt with your colleagues, their cultures. You feel like an alien in the firm, to be honest. That's what I felt like. Even now, when I have built more great connections and working relationship with my colleagues around me, when I sit with them in a party or in a dinner, I still feel like a foreigner, meaning that there's still distance. So I mean, I appreciate my opportunity to learn from them, but if you seriously consider to practice abroad, then there are things that you need to consider, both good things and bad things.
Yes, and if I may, I would like to add some more about the opportunities for the young practitioners in ADRs field in Vietnam or even in foreign countries like Singapore or other countries as well. You not only have a chance to practice as litigation lawyers like Ming or Donnie is doing, you also have a chance to work as the counsel. The secretary for the arbitration, for arbitral tribunal, or the administrative secretary of the arbitration centers. Even if you're working as an in-house counsel for enterprise, obviously an enterprise could have an arbitration cases, and you could involve in any step of the ADRs like negotiation, mediation, and arbitration as well. So the opportunity for you to step in the arbitration and ADR wars is really broad, and I believe that you have a lot of chance, even if you're young. So, Nguyen, do you have any further questions for our guests?
Well, I guess just because there are a lot of questions about this in the chat, and because we have again, 2 different profiles, I think a lot of people are asking about, what they could do, and Donnie, you just say you have to take initiative if you want to do this. What are the initiatives, to for those who really got hooked on arbitration? We got message from people who said they went to webinars organized by VIAC, and then they really want to do this. But just to tell you, it's the same in Europe. A lot of people want to do this, and we don't find all the opportunities to do it. But can you tell us, Man, first, what can you concretely do if you're in this situation to, get, I don't know, you spoke about the institutions, we spoke a bit about the secretary work, but can you give pointers, to the audience? You said KCAB, PCA, what else, can they do? And then, Donnie, if you can follow up by explaining, how you took the first initiative, how you managed to do this training abroad that brought you to Singapore.
Yes, so I will speak from my own experience. So actually, like Donnie said before, when we were in law school, there were not many opportunities for us to find a good workplace for ADR and arbitration. However, and moreover, law school did not teach us much about ADR. I remember that at that time, ADR was briefly introduced to us in 1 or 2 commercial law classes, and there's nothing more. So I think that it was difficult for us because we do not have kind of systematic knowledge on the ADR, and we did not have many job opportunities at that time. However, now it is a little bit different. So I think that if you want to have a good job in good career path in this ADR field, the first thing is you should have good knowledge and skill on that, because it will be very difficult for you if you do not have good knowledge or skill, because you may not impress the employer. So the chance to getting a job will be a little bit more difficult. Second, I think that you should not be afraid of taking chances, because I see that there are many job advertisement right now. For example, like as far as I remember, VIAC has posted 2 job advertisement like in the 3 or 4 months ago. So the opportunities are here. And then if you have good preparation, and then you just apply for that and to see how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally share and agree with the point that you have raised. Back when we did, you know, you went to Hanoi Law University, right? And then I went to Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam. There's an obvious lack of training and educating in terms of arbitration in Vietnamese universities. At least that's the situation, like which happened to me like 10 years ago. And I understand that it still happens. I'm not sure. I mean, yeah. But there's a lack of I think there's a lack of authorities or textbooks or arbitration databases in Vietnam where you can do your research and gain knowledge as well in this field of arbitration. If you want to pursue arbitration as your main career, then I highly recommend you to do some following things, but must be in English, I have to say. So including doing a master's degrees in dispute resolution overseas, and some typical great schools that you can consider is the Queen Mary, very strong school of law and they have an LLM in specialized in international arbitration, I think. My course, the degrees that I took is the Geneva Master of Law in Dispute Settlement, aka the MIDS, MIDS. If you have heard of it, or if you have not, you should Google it. It's definitely one of the degrees that you should, one of the programs that you should consider. Doing training courses. I think when it's like 10 years ago, these training courses, for example, the VIAC, the Vietnam Institute of Arbitration, right? Founded by Mr. Tony Nguyen, Trung Nam, EP Legal, they are very helpful courses. I wish I had those courses when I was like 10 years ago. But now you guys have it, so why don't you apply for it? Other than that, you're trying to apply for internship in law firms. Apply for Miss Trang. It's very, very strong. One of the strongest arbitration practices in Vietnam. Apply for VLAF. Why not? Apply for arbitration institutions, for VIAC, or if you're more ambitious, apply for ICC or the PCA, Permanent Court of Arbitration, which I also did a few years ago. Great opportunities to get access. I mean, like, if you have to do your research, you cannot just count on other people to do it for you. But there's one thing that I want to point out. Recently, when I had a chance to talk with some partners from Dzungsrt, actually Ms. Chan is there. When we were on a car and we went to a dinner together, and Mr. Ming, who is the managing partner of Dzungsrt, he mentioned that there's a plan of translating some arbitration textbooks from English to Vietnamese for those people who can't understand English very well. They can study arbitration. To be honest, I don't see the point of it. I mean, I admire Ming a lot, but I have to disagree with him on that one. Because arbitration, unlike many other areas of law, in my opinion, is highly conceptual, in the sense that you have to deal with a lot of unique concepts in this field. Like how could you translate terms like arbitrability or bifurcation or summary procedure? How do you translate that? And you can explain that in Vietnamese in a long sentence, but you cannot translate that in a textbook, because there's no way to translate that with like 2 or 3 Vietnamese words. If you try, you can do it in like long Vietnamese phrases, like 5 or 6 words. But then if you translate a textbook, then you have to bring those 5 or 6 words throughout the textbook. And it looks ugly. And it doesn't look nice. And in the end, you would have to know what it's called in English. So what is the point of reading it in Vietnamese?
I'm sorry, Tony, for interrupt you, but sure. I want to add some more and clarify some points here.
Okay.
I believe that we have a lot of free courses organized and also seminar like this, organized by different arbitration centers. ICC, SIC, VIAC, they all have free courses and webinar for students or young practitioners who want to know about arbitration and ADRs. We also have a lot of paid courses organized by SIC and VIAC in Vietnam. VIAC also have an institution which provide a lot of costs to train young practitioners and students as well, which is suitable from the beginners to intermediate level. So yes, we have more chance to learn about ADRs in Vietnam now. With regard to the books that you mentioned, actually is the ICCA handbook, which is, you don't know, but in Vietnam is very useful because not only the young practitioners and students will read that book, but also we use it to make as the reference to the local courts, to local judge who could not read in English. The judge also need to know about arbitration and they do not have enough English skills to read that book. I understand that there are some terminology we could not find the same in Vietnam, but at least the students or the beginner needs to know the very basic knowledge and they need to understand the similar definition in Vietnamese first. So that's the reason why we want to have, and there's some projects to translate English or foreign language books into Vietnamese book. That's the reason why. And I believe that this is also a step for us to, that should be taken to improve the knowledge of not only students and young practitioners, but also other practitioners in Vietnam who want to know about arbitration.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. And I agree with what you say. We need that. It's just that I'm trying to encourage the younger students who have not read English very well or understand English very well. They should improve that if they seriously consider to pursue this career for long term. Then I think English is one of the most important things that they should pursue. Yeah, they should improve. Sorry. Yeah.
Yes, and also remember that we have a lot of people who could not speak English, but they fluent in French, Chinese, and also arbitration does not exclude this jurisdiction, right? So they still have chance in other jurisdiction. English is not essential. It's a tool, but not the essential.
I mean, Man, do you have any opinion on this, maybe on the English?
Yeah, it's kind of, I think it for you, Nguyen, it's like very it's not familiar with you because it's a kind of issue in Vietnam only where not many people can use English fluently and for the job, at least in my age and or in my time. So I think that Donnie has something is quite right because English to me is quite important for practicing arbitration, international arbitration, because there's a lot of books in English. You can learn a lot from that. And if you do not have enough or sufficient knowledge, your work will be very, very difficult. And for example, like if you do not understand English, it will be very, very difficult for you to access to information or to seminar like this. So that's the first thing. But on the other hand, if you do not have fluent English, it may not be kind of a severe or something serious a problem for you, because there are always chances for domestic arbitration or arbitration in other language, because arbitration is international. So maybe your chances are a little bit smaller or more specific, more specified, but there are still chances. You just need to step up and take it. Yeah.
Because someone mentioned it, yes, there is still this book, no, the Red Fern Hunter, that is still, sorry, I don't manage to show it, but this one is from 2004. So I think that indeed you need like the later translations.
Yes, I think the VIAC had an updated translation as well, but I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not sure which year it is.
Okay, and now we spoke. I mean, I think we in the Q&A session we will speak more about, you know, like how to get your foot into the door. I think there are a few other points that we can discuss. Just not to lose the momentum, you know, because for instance, Man, you and I, we met also doing association work, and I know it's not per se researching or practicing. But do you think that, you know, maybe also getting engaged in associations? I know that there is now also a young chapter of VIART Vietnam and so forth. And Trang, you also, I think, leading a young association. So do you think it helped you and being in Vietnam, but participating in the activities of young associations that are focused on arbitration?
I think that is one of the ways for you to step into the world of arbitration. So if you have good English, you can participate in several associations like the Young ICCA or many similar associations. And if you do not, then in Vietnam there are also several associations like the VIAC or VIART, something similar. Always have seminars and courses for you to attend and to learn from. So I think that you have to do research and find the most suitable association for you to join.
Thank you. I think now let's maybe you know, have you guys share with us like the not so bright side, you know, of this career. You know, what are the challenges, you know, that you you know, that you encountered, but that you still encounter also today. Maybe starting with Man, then with Donnie.
So I must say that ADR work is a difficult job because first you have to deal with not only the procedural issue but also substantive issue, and the law is like a sea of knowledge, and you cannot know it all by just one day or one night. Second, working in ADR means that you have to deal with people, and that's sometimes a very difficult thing to do. You have to deal with the opponent, deal with the arbitrators, the mediators, and the witness, the experts. So it will be very difficult if you are not you do not have like suitable skill for that, soft skills. And like Donnie mentions, I think that is sometimes is a very stressful job. So for me, I think that we need like a strong will or strong desire to follow the career path, or you may feel like you want to quit the job anytime you have the stress. So that's all for me.
Yeah, thank you. Just want to mention briefly the point that you have mentioned about the governing law. I think it's the typical challenge for arbitration is the substantive governing law in different cases are different. So throughout my career, I've dealt with cases governing by Vietnamese law, of course, Singapore law, New York law. We have Laos law, English law. I mean, you need help from the co-counsel from those jurisdictions, right? But sometimes you will have to do the research yourself on foreign laws, which you are not familiar with, because as the lead counsel, you cannot blindly trust and 100% rely on the co-counsel without checking. So you need to look into the laws yourself. When I work in Singapore, I have to do a lot of research on Singapore law. And that includes reading Singapore or English cases and know how to apply the case law into the facts, which is a quite unfamiliar exercise for me, coming from a civil law background. So as a lawyer with civil law background, I have gone through really tough time to get familiar with the common law concepts, improving my reading of the case law because English is not my native language. I read case slower than the local associate. That's sometimes it's a bit frustrating. But the good thing is when you have knowledge of both civil law and common law, I think that's a big advantage because you can look at how the law actually works in a deeper level. You do not just blindly follow the mindset of, if you like only know civil law, then you kind of blindly follow the mindset of the civil law and you don't understand what common law people think, and the other way around. Some concept in arbitration, for example, is common law thing, like cross-examination. It's strictly common law thing, like before the common law court. So as a civil law lawyer who wants, if you want to practice arbitration, then how would you plan to get familiar with cross-examination? If you don't practice hard enough, you'll be put in a greatly disadvantageous position compared to common law lawyer who has much more experience than you in cross-examination. So my suggestion is, if you really want to get up to a higher level in practicing arbitration, then especially in a common law jurisdiction, if you are civil law jurisdiction and you want to practice in a common law jurisdiction, then you need to not only should you strengthen your knowledge in the law of your own jurisdiction, in your case Vietnamese, but you should also start spending a little bit time looking or self-learn common law, like English law. I would say treat it more like a hobby than a burden, because from my point of view, common law is very interesting. A lot of principles under common law can be easily traced back to the origins, which was from cases from the 17th or 18th century. Whereas in Vietnamese law, I would imagine it's quite hard to understand the origin or the reason why a legal provision exists. So if you love the concept of law, then I think common law is your thing.
Yes, and apart from that, I'm thinking of another pressure associated with COVID pandemic that affected almost every aspect of our lives and across the ADR services too. So what would be the change the COVID has imposed in ADRs, and how could we adapt?
Actually, it's a very difficult question for me because so when COVID-19 was there, actually there were some of my cases were affected by COVID-19, but most of them, like, they cannot be physical hearing, and it's difficult, and everything is a little bit slower than normal, the submission and something like that. However, recent year, like the 1 or 2 years recently, it's no more an issue. So for me, in my personal experience, I do not see that COVID-19 has left some kind of significant impact on ADR.
Yeah, I totally agree with Minga. To be honest, we can see as arbitration practitioners, I think that all the panelists will share with me that there are major changes from, for example, for submissions. There's a transition to electronic only submissions. Like before COVID, electronic submissions were already common, right? We know that. But arbitration rules generally did not articulate a preference for electronic over hard copy submission. But after the start of the pandemic, then arbitral institutions quickly recognized the impact of quarantine and the lockdown orders on hard copy filing requirements. And some institutions like the Exit or ICC, I remember that they even announced that they were taking steps to reduce the reliance on paper filings in their cases. So now the pandemic is over, and I realized that in most of the cases that I'm doing now, the hard copy submissions are no longer required. And this is the kind of the flexibility that I like about arbitration that I just mentioned, as opposed to court proceedings. I think the transition to electronic only submissions brings substantial efficiencies to arbitral process, reducing the time and expenses that previously required to prepare and ship the hard copies to the relevant parties, to the arbitrators, to the opposing counsel, to the institution. There's another point, is the increased use of the virtual hearings, right? Before COVID, majority of the hearings are organized in person. Like throughout the pandemic, I have opportunities to attend the evidentiary hearing and CMCs as virtual hearings, efficiently organized by some third party via like Zoom platforms, Blue Jeans platform. After the COVID, people realized that they don't necessarily need to have every hearing in person. And I think in this regard, in Singapore, we have to compliment Maxwell Chambers. They have done a great job, make the virtual hearing experience as close as possible as in-person hearing. Undeniably, there are things in virtual hearing that virtual hearing cannot replace in-person hearing. Like people believe that like real human contacts in person are always better. Like if you ask my boss, Ho Nguyen, who you have been familiar with throughout this week, they need to, from the experienced lawyer's point of view, they need to feel the vibe of the room when they do the oral advocacy, like the reactions of the arbitrators, the body movement of the witnesses, etc. In a virtual hearing, you can see the arbitrators and the witnesses' facial reactions, but sometimes you cannot feel the vibe because we're not sitting in the same room and cannot see the entire body of the participants because we can only see the upper body, right? But for young and inexperienced lawyer, like such as myself, I personally prefer virtual hearing over in-person hearing because I would feel much less pressure in a virtual hearing as opposed to in-person hearing where you feel that all eyes are on you. Like the mute, so you have the mute button in front of you. Like you can mute it. And when you cross-examine a witness, you can mute the button, push the mute button, calm yourself down a little bit, and take a look at the real-time transcripts, and even discuss with your team on the next steps, on the next questions without the other side hearing it. It's great. I mean, like you don't have that chance in person hearing. Yeah.
Donnie. I was checking the questions because we are arriving at the end of the discussion and we will go to questions from the audience soon. And it's great because they're actually like you're asking all the questions that are in our roadmap. And so we were gonna go actually to the future and basically what are your aspirations? I mean, you're both for the future of your career. I mean, people are in awe in the chat about your experience that you already have at your young ages. We also have a question about your ages because people are very impressed actually. So now you're still young in your career. So what do you aspire for the future? And are there any specific goals that you have? Where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years?
Actually, now ADR is my career, so of course I have to make a living from that. But in addition to that, I always want to like somehow contribute to ADR community in Vietnam and internationally, because I think that especially in Vietnam there's not many chances like in globally. So I try to do that by several ways. First, by for example, like sharing my experience with you, like in similar like this. Second, I'm trying to become a good lawyer, because only if you become a good lawyer, you will get involved in many good cases, and then you learn a lot from that, and you can share your experience from that with other people. And I also think that I'm trying to become an arbitrator later, to get involved in the real cases from different perspective, and then from that I can also learn and share with you a lot more.
Yeah, I think our answer would be quite similar. Just to share with you, I mean, I've learned from one of the best, right? I think Nguyen is probably one of the best dispute or arbitration lawyers now in Singapore, and I'm not just saying that because she's my boss. Because I really think that. So apparently every hearing that I have had with her is like watching a master at work. But the depressing part is that, like, you tend to compare yourself with that person. Then you feel that you feel like you want to get to that level, but like you can never get to that. Deep down inside, I feel like I can never get to her level. So it's frustrating sometimes. And after a while, I realized that I don't need to be that great to be considered successful. I can just be a better lawyer than myself yesterday. And at the same time, building connections with my colleagues in and out of the firm, in Vietnam, in Singapore, in every part of the world, if I can. I think in the end, everything will be fine. And if you work hard enough and do what you love, and you'll be fine. Speaking of the arbitrator job, I mean, I have done tribunal secretary work for partners of one partnership, especially for Nguyen. I feel like that job is very interesting because I get to look at the matter and read the party's position in a kind of similar perspective as an arbitrator. And I realized that the way that you look at the case from a completely different angle, because like you are neutral now, compared to when you are counsel for a party. Normally as a counsel, and you read the opposing party's submission in order to find flaws and then fight back with a very strong fighting sense, tend to be biased towards your client's position, obviously. But as a tribunal secretary, you get to read both sides' stories with a fresh and neutral mind, and you see the case quite different from this angle. I just find that interesting. Do I plan to become an arbitrator? Yes. But do I want to work as a full-time arbitrator as like Mr. Thang or Mr. Dzungsrt? And I haven't thought about it. But I mean, right now the answer is no. Still want to be a lawyer. I think being a lawyer is quite interesting. Yeah.
But I think that just to clarify with the audience, actually you can do both, right? You can be a lawyer and you can also be an arbitrator. Yeah. So it's not like a qualification or barrier for that.
True. That's true. Yeah.
But thank you, Man, because we had actually twice the question in the chat about whether we can be both, you know, and you can definitely be both. You can be a counsel in some of your cases and an arbitrator in some of your other cases. At least that's what I do.
Yes, and in addition to that, I believe that you also know a lot of famous arbitrators who are also famous counsel, like Garibon, we have yes, right. You all know Garibon, Arbitration, or many other famous arbitrators as well. So I don't think that this will be any matters related to, yes, we have the conflicts of interest and the matter related to confidentiality, but I don't think that really matters. We also see some questions related to this matter, like if you have to quit a job at the lawyers, then whether it would affect your incomes. If you quit a job as a lawyer to become an arbitrator, then would it affect your income or not? So that's one of the questions raised by our audience. Maybe Minh, do you want to share anything about this?
Actually, it's a very difficult question for me because I am not an arbitrator, and I don't know about the income that an arbitrator can make, especially in Vietnam, because it may vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. For example, like if you are an arbitrator in Singapore or in Switzerland or in France, something or somewhere else, it can be different. But I think that in Vietnam, in my own experience in Vietnam, sometimes being an arbitrator is not only about money. For example, it may be good for your reputation. It may also be good for your career because you will look at the case, look at the dispute at a very different perspective. And it's also be good if ADR and arbitration is kind of your passion. You just cannot like doing because I see many questions. They talk about how to overcome the stress in this ADR career path. So actually, for me, I have assisted my boss, an arbitrator, in several cases, and I think that is one of the way because you will step out of the normal zone when you being a counsel in a case, and then you be in another position when you look at the parties to see how they argue their cases, and I think that it's kind of interesting, and it will have to reduce the stress in your life. So being an arbitrator is not always about money; it's about also other things.
Yeah, I think I may provide a little bit more practical answer than Minh, because I have done tribunal secretary work a lot. So I know that, because I mean the number is confidential, so I cannot say, but generally the hourly rates when you are an arbitrator are lower than your general your normal hourly rate when you're a lawyer. Yeah, so probably actually a very famous Vietnamese arbitrator told me that if you want to be a full-time arbitrator, you make sure that your wife can cover all your family expenses before you consider. So yeah, I mean yeah, the answer is but I agree with Minh, and money is not everything. That's true. So yeah, I mean when you rich enough, then money is not everything.
Well, and if I may add, I remember asking this question, on how to become an arbitrator to my professor when I was a young student. And I mean, now, and years after, I realized that it was way premature as a question, So I think the debate whether you're going to become a practicing lawyer as a counsel or an arbitrator is a question you should not ask yourself at the outset of your career, because arbitrators' mandates usually come with experience. So it's not really a plan or a career path to go straight to arbitrator. You're going to have to do the secretary to arbitrators for a while before being nominated.
Yes, so from Ms. Hoang's answer, I understand that you need to be a good lawyer first and earn enough money to become an arbitrator. Just joking. But actually, it's not like that. I understand that a lot famous arbitrators have good incomes from the exclusive jobs at arbitrator. But you must become a famous first, so that you will have a lot of works. Otherwise, you will only have 1 or 2 cases per year, and of course, it could affect your incomes. But I believe that in such circumstances, nothing prevents you from acting in both positions as arbitrator and lawyers. So in any way, you secure your incomes.
And just so Trang, I think we should maybe like go through some of the questions because we had a lot of questions. I think you can see them as well. But there is one, and I think you have not answered yet. But everyone is very impressed, and then we had several messages saying like, for when I hear the descriptions of your career, it sounds like you're living the dream. So everyone is very impressed, and everyone is very interested in knowing your ages. So if you feel comfortable, please do share. And also, like, another question related to that is at what age you think we can become an arbitrator?
To share with you, I was born in 1992, and I'm now 31 years old, but a little bit old, not so young like before. And I think that actually there's no kind of certain requirement for the age to become an arbitrator. However, I think that it depends a lot on your own experience and knowledge. You need to have experience, like Ms. Nguyen said before. You need to have experience to deal with people, to deal with the case. So for me, I think that like 35 or 40 above, and there may be a good age to become an arbitrator. But just my personal opinion, yeah.
Yeah, I'm 1 year younger than Nguyen. I was born in 93. Celebrating my 30th birthday this year. Yeah, I agree with the age that he said. Yeah, 35 or 40. That's about right, because then you would have kind of enough experience to. I mean, if you want to, somebody told me that like being an arbitrator is like it's a form of being a judge. Like when you get to decide, and you need to be mature enough, you need to be good enough for that. So yeah, 35, 40, something like that.
Trang, I don't know if you have other specific question that you wanted us to see, but I mean, maybe just one more, just because we had so many questions on the LLMs, and especially on the LLMs in the US or Australia. I mean, I've put the link to a global guide to all LLMs worldwide, but I think this is a matter of personal research, But maybe, Trang, you can speak about, because I know that you also studied and made programs. So we heard about from Donnie, but I don't know if you have anything to add, with regards to LLMs, because we had a lot of questions about this.
Yes, for LLM, I believe that in many countries now provided LLM programs related to ADRs. Like Donnie say, we have the Queen Mary's, we have the MITS. Also, we have a very distinct program in Singapore as well. For me, I got my LLM program in Netherlands from Erasmus University. And also, I know that there are some other universities in Netherlands, like Maastricht, Leiden also have a good LLM program. So it really depends on your budget and as well as your interest in the subjects provided in each programs. Yes, and I see that Hoang, could you recommend some other LLM programs in Europe as well?
But in Europe, I think the one that Donnie did, like the MIDS that you mentioned, is a very good one. I've also put the link to the one at Sciences Po in Paris. It's a quite famous one, and it has a structure that is similar to the MIDS, from what I understand. And the Queen Mary one is also very famous. But I think these are the biggest names in terms of arbitration specialized masters. They are the most famous in Europe. There is one in Frankfurt as well, but the most famous ones are probably the three ones we mentioned.
Yeah, thank you. And I see a very interesting question that related to the difficulties in recognitions the enforceability of the arbitral awards in Vietnam. So would that pose any difficulties for counsel practicing arbitration in foreign arbitration center on behalf of a Vietnamese party? Can you provide some of your insights and experience related to this?
Just I think that is this question is more like about the law, the knowledge, and I just want to share with you that so I think that someone just mentioned previously that Vietnamese judges, Ms. Trang, right? Vietnamese judges, they are not really familiar with arbitration and ADR. So that's and the laws, some provision are not clear enough for you to enforce, and especially for when you come to the enforcement of foreign arbitral award, the requirement is quite difficult sometimes. For example, like if you do not have a treaty between Vietnam and the relevant state, then you may have to go to the reciprocal basis, which is very, very difficult and uncertain. So I think that if the only way for you is to research, to know enough about the risk, and to make sure that you analyze the risk to your clients before having them obtain the award from the arbitral tribunal. Because sometimes, for example, if you can ensure that the format of the award is well enough to be recognized in Vietnam, that will help your client very much in the future. For example, like in international arbitration, it's very common to have partial award and final award. However, having both of them being enforced in Vietnam may not be always easy, because sometimes Vietnamese court they see that they are two different awards, something like that. But for some other court, they say that it's only the final award that have the final effect, and the partial award have like nothing in the arbitration. So it really depends, and you will have to have experience for that.
Tony, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, totally agree with what he just said. From the point of view of foreign lawyers, Vietnam is not an easy jurisdiction that you can enforce an arbitral award, which is kind of reflects through the third-party funders' perspective. I think that's kind of the clearest way for us to understand, because like the third-party funder, the final goal is to get the money, right? So they can be profitable. But for cases, Vietnamese related cases that we seek for the funders to fund our client, when they heard that the respondents only have assets in Vietnam and can only enforce award in Vietnam, they are very reluctant. So like I think we would need to improve on that. Back to what Ms. Trang said earlier about the need to educate the judges, I think that's a really important point, really important. And I understand that in China and in India, they are doing that. So I see no reason why Vietnam should not follow that path. Like, I mean, like the ADR week, invite the judges to attend the ADR week. Why not?
Well, I think we're getting up to the end of our session. So I'm willing, but Trang, let me know if you have other points. Otherwise, I was thinking, is there any question that you have seen, Man or Donnie, in the chat that you would like to answer before we finish? I mean, something that or something that you want to add. You know, most of the questions were, you know, following up on your interventions. You know.
I think that the last question that I want Ming and Donnie to answer very simple, but maybe other young practitioners when interested in is that how you overcome the challenges that you face with when you doing your job, like stress, like boring of the case or some kind like this. How could you?
The question for me is quite simple because I think that my case is quite special because I really like dispute resolution from the beginning because it's like a very suitable for my personality. I want to go to the details of the case. I want to try to explore different arguments. I want to go to the end of the issue, something like that. So personally, I like dispute resolution and arbitration. So when I have something, and actually I did not encounter like stress usually in my career. So but when I have one, so I try to look back on the bright side of my career. Like I said before, it's interesting, it's well paid, and it's and I can try to find other way like participating in sharing information experience. So everything combined together would have to make me forget about the difficulty and obstacle, and then I can continue with my career path.
Yeah, I have nothing to contribute to this question other than what Minh just said. I mean, like, find yourself hobbies. That's a realistic thing to do. Thing to do. I mean, like, I used to watch YouTube clips. If I'm too stressed, I watch YouTube clips, some for like 5 or 10 minutes, and I go back to work. One way to release the stress. Another way is to find yourself a group of friends so you can complain with them. You can complain that, oh, my boss is so sorry. I shouldn't talk about my boss. Yeah, the work is very stressed, and then work is very stressed, and and people just comfort you and things like that. I think like in the end, like you, as I said, you feel that you grow up and you become a better lawyer, then you feel good about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, I think that there's no job without pressure, right?
Yeah.
Every job has pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thanks. So, in summary of your answer, that is, do the job you love and love the job you do, right? So now I leave the floor for Ms. Nguyen to summarize the talk show today and also give some outro to our discussion today.
Well, thank you, Trang. I think we had a very, very inspiring discussion. I hope that it was inspiring to the audience. It seems to have been, because they were very much willing to do the same as you did, you know, and embark on a career in ADR. I see really like so much excitement in the even younger generation, you know, for this career path in Vietnam. And it seems like now, like the lawyers are very well equipped to also, you know, make the case law develop, you know, in a positive way. So I guess like we have had great examples, and I'm sure that also one advice is to, you know, get to speak to, you know, if you go to webinars of the VIAC, go and ask advice, you know, to Nguyen and Donnie if you cross their paths, you know. It's also arbitration community is very much a community in which mentorship and advice to younger is generally given, you know, very generously by the older generations. And thank you so much, you know, to our 2 stars today, you know, to have shared their a bit of their professional life. Thanks for your time, and thanks for your insight, and for answering all the questions of the audience. It was great to have you, and I wish you the best, of course, in your future endeavors. And to all our listeners, thank you for being with us. And we hope that you enjoyed everything, the interview, the tips, and also personal anecdotes sometimes. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of the evening.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Trang, did you have something to add? No?
Yeah, you already say what I want to say.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay,
so
great.
goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.